That was great, right? Another quiet day at Columbine. Oh, my book. So we're continuing our exploration of blessing. We've been working with this book, The Gentle Art of Blessing by Pierre Pradevant. If you have wanted a copy, or after the service today, if you'd like a copy, my understanding is there are some additional copies in the bookstore. Pierre has quite an interesting assumption here, that simply by quietly blessing, doesn't even have to be out loud, although you could bless people out loud, that it's going to have a profound impact on your life and on the life of others. And we've been working with it now, I think, this is our third week. So today, we get to look at it through the lens of love. And he starts right out, we're looking at chapters 6 and 7. He starts right out with a personal truth that I think we'll find is true for all of us. If we expressed aggression, hostility, fear, or lack of kindness towards someone, would we not prefer them to react with love, trust, and forgiveness rather than respond to us in kind? Amazing, right? I mean, that's like universal for all of us. And it's really the golden rule that's being presented here, which we can find in the book of Matthew. In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. In everything, do unto others as you would have them do to you. Not so easy to do, right? But it's what we would all like. And he does a beautiful challenge to us in alignment with this silent blessing. He says, don't just let it focus on your deeds, but take it to your thoughts. Hold thoughts for others just in the same frame, the same vein, if you will, as the thoughts that you want them to hold for you. I love what he has to say about this. There can be no more demanding and stimulating spiritual discipline than this. No practice that requires more effort and perseverance, and blessing is one of the most privileged paths to getting there. It's not easy, right? It's, in fact, I've just been amazed and continue to be amazed. You guys are in week 3. I'm probably in week 10 of this because Sue and I started working with this book weeks ago. And I'd like to report that it's getting easier, but not so much. Because what you find out is it's so easy to move into some kind of less than blessing thought about someone. And I'm so happy that in chapter 8, he introduces judgment as a major block to love. And really, love and all those other words that we used, that we want people to meet us with, love, trust, and forgiveness, they're all aspects of the heart. But judgment comes from someplace other than the heart. And he has, I think, just a great overview of judgment in the book also, when he says, I've come to the conclusion that a spirit of judgment, with its derivations of labeling, cheap criticism, and above all the gambit of comparing people and their achievements, so comparative judgment, represents the social evil par excellence. Judgment entertains fear in all areas, kills spontaneity and creates creativity, crushes joy in its claws, feeds gossip and the reading of murderous tidbits of personal opinion, poisons hearts and minds, and sows doubt. Yeah, amen. Amen, right. And it's so true. When we are being judged, whether internally or externally, we pull away. We put up defenses. And in that, we cut ourselves off from who we are and what we are as spiritual beings, which always expresses as a flow. And so it kills spontaneity, which is a flow in us. It kills creativity. Oh, we can strive to be creative in that defended state, but it lacks that inspiration, right? It lacks that little oomph that Spirit gives us as it expresses through us. And instead, it's replaced with fear and doubt. And sometimes judgment comes from outside of us, but the vast majority of judgment comes from within us, from a structure, a big structure of our ego that Sigmund Freud called the superego. I think it's just as simple and clear to call it the judge. The judge has ideas and rules, right? It has its own little set of rules of how we should live. And boy, those rules do not always conform to the law of the land, I've discovered these last few weeks, like driving. God help you if you drive slower than my judge thinks that you should drive. And I don't know really, I don't actually think it's the judge that is judging the other people. I think it's actually me that's judging the others, trying to avoid the ego's judgment, you know? So for me, I don't know exactly what it is, except that if I'm in a hurry to get somewhere, everybody should be in the same hurry to get there, right? And how humbling it is to look down at my speedometer and go, oh, they're going the speed limit. I want them to go faster, you know. So, and it's not a light thing. It's a heavy, come on. It's almost an inner desperation, right? I don't want to be judged myself. So conform to my judge. Even though each one of us, we have a judge, but each one of us has different rules, or a slightly different take. We have our different focuses, the different things we hold the people in our lives accountable to. And that's where we come back then to if we've expressed aggression, hostility, fear, or lack of kindness. We're really expressing the really rough interiority of when we're getting attacked by our judge. It is no fun. And for that reason, I'm a big fan of defending it, of meeting it with the same kind of energy that it meets you to claim back your freedom. There's my mother, of all people, sent me this really fun cartoon that unfortunately was part of a whole list of other cartoons. I couldn't figure out how to separate this one out just to show you the image, but the words are good enough, right? Remember when you were young and couldn't wait to grow up so you could do whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted? Remember those days? How's that working out for you? And why isn't it working out? Because you got a judge always poking at you and pestering you, and you need to do this, and you need to do it now, and oh, how could you have said that to such and such, or how could they have said that to you? And you never get to relax. And it's funny, but the flow happens when you relax. And so at some point, we really got to get firm with that judge and, use our strength to come back to what is the life that I want to live, to be questioning what's happening in our lives. If only all of you could live according to what my judge says is right. I would be one happy camper. So, here's how I've been, the universe loves to put it right in your face. So this week, I was out gardening. I was doing, that fall cleanup that you can do where you're deadheading plants and stuff and getting ready for winter. And I live on a very busy street, 14th Avenue in Denver. It's become, with all the population growth, especially at rush hour, it's like a little superhighway, little 3-lane superhighway. And there's stoplights along the way to keep it from moving at 65 miles an hour. And so it sort of moves like blood through your veins, right? The light turns green and the whole mass moves over, or like a typewriter, they just move. So it's very slow, tends to kind of get people's blood going, right? In a fiery, angry, impatient way. So I'm out there I'm just totally at one with my hands that are snipping things. I'm focusing on being present, and all of a sudden there's this altercation where some guy is trying to get across the 3 lanes while they're at a stop, and somebody else comes buzzing up and gets frustrated, and all of a sudden the guy who's frustrated just lays on his horn, not moving at all, just lays on it, right? And then the guy the other guy who finally makes it across, he rolls down, he stops, he's beeping his horn, but in between he's yelling, "Yeah, you come over here and tell me that." Oh my goodness, all this anger came up in me. It was crazy, And I thought, oh, I'm supposed to be blessing. At least I got that far, right? At least I remembered that time. But the blessing was so hollow. I mean, have you ever tried to bless when you're just raging angry? And so while Pierre talks about how blessing is the cure-all, and maybe for some of you it will be. In fact, I would love to hear from you if it's the cure-all, because obviously you're not as entrenched in your issues as I am. But for me, I had to work it a little bit. I had to sit there and go, okay, why am I angry? And why can't I just simply be blessing? And so the first thing that I got to see as I was sitting with it, and that actually came pretty quickly, was that I am not allowed to be angry. I can be angry inside. But I had an experience when I was either in the 4th or 5th grade where some kid threw his bike down in front of me when I was riding off school grounds, and it caused me to crash, and I got up and I was really angry, and I was yelling at him. Unbeknownst to me, my mother was you know how cars line up to pick up kids? Well, my mother was waiting for my sister to come out to go to the dentist, and she witnessed the whole thing, of which I heard about it that night, right? In what felt to me in kind of a shaming sort of way. Like, how powerful if my mother had said to me, "Gee, I saw you get upset. What do you suppose you were upset for?" Because the truth was, it was out of control, right? I was out of control. I was actually, I'm sure, scared when that bike all of a sudden got thrown in front of me. But all my mother said was, we don't do that. We don't get angry at people like that. And so the very obedient judge comes in, and I can get angry inside, but I can't get angry outside. And that just becomes a little pressure cooker for us, right? You can't express. So I got to see, wow, those guys really disturbed my peaceful environment in the front yard, and I got furiously angry. Then the next thing, and actually Jean Berwick helped me with this, and I saw, there she is on the aisle, little scoundrel. She pointed out, just because we're blessing people doesn't mean we have to put up with everything, right? And even Pierre does a beautiful job of saying, yeah, we're blessing the sinner, but not the sin, right? So what I got to see was when somebody just lays their horn on, and doesn't take it off. And I mean to tell you, these cars, I could probably reach out and touch one of these cars from where I was. We're talking right here in my front yard, and there's a horn blaring that we can say, stop, right? And that's another thing that my judge just put that over the blanket of, yeah, you can't do that. You need to be good. But we can say, stop. If we're getting abused, if something is really not working for us, we can ask for it to stop, or if it's really, we need to meet it with the same energy that it's meeting us sometimes. So, next day, don't you love the universe? The way it just cycles back around. And for me, in a quick cycle, Pierre says this, I'm always telling you the universe loves you, right? That's why it punishes you. Here's how he puts it. It's really beautiful. Constant progression spirit word is a fundamental law of the universe. Life, the universal law of harmony, our divine mother, infinite love, will not let go of us until we've learned whatever we need to learn to graduate to a higher level of consciousness, where we will have new lessons. Yeah, hallelujah. But here's something that he pointed out. James 1, and in Unity, we use the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible. But he goes to a relatively obscure translation, the Phillips translation, and here's what it says in James 1. When all kinds of trials and trepidations crowd into your lives, my brothers, don't resent them as intruders, but welcome them as friends. Because you see, life cycles back until we get the lesson that we need to get, until we see what it is that's blocking us from the freedom of being in the flow. And this is the love. And this is one of the real benefits of being focused on blessing, because we can go there and go, well, okay, I'm going to bless this, even though I'm suffering in having it held right to my face. So the next day, I'm out in the yard again. And of course, it's rush hour, and the same thing happens again, right? Two different players, two men again. And this time, actually, I'm up on the porch, and the horn just is blaring. And I think, well, okay, I actually don't have to put up with this. So I stand up. Because I thought probably be more effective if I stood up. I was going to say, enough horn. We got it, But the horn stopped. Maybe that's the power of it. I don't know. But I tend to not think so. But here's what really astounded me. I was instantly able to bless those two men. The blessings seemed to pour. They felt heartfelt. They did not feel empty, like forced. I saw them as young and afraid like I was on my bike when that other bike got thrown in front of me and I crashed. I was able to bless all of their potential. It was so pleasant. And you see, that's the beauty of it, that our souls just are looking to be freed from whatever holds us, and often it's unconscious to us. And when we free it, the love is just there. We are naturally loving beings, ready to bless. And particularly when we unravel, if we're triggered by something, there's something personal to us there. And when we are willing to unravel it for ourselves, we have a relationship with that situation ourselves. You see, I could relate to those men and to the fear that I now heard in what was going on. I did not need to put up with the horn necessarily. I should just put a big sign in the yard. Really? There's been enough horn honking today. So we just have a couple more minutes, and if you haven't read these 2 chapters, they're chock full of powerful stories. One of them is the story of a gentleman that they called Wild Bill Cody, who was a lawyer who was put into the Nazi Germany prison camps 6 years before the end of the war. And yet, if you were to see him, he looked like he had only been there for a couple of months. He was vibrant, healthy, and alive. And his story is powerful. When the Nazis came in to his neighborhood, and he was Jewish, they lined his family up, but not him because he could speak German, and they shot his family in front of him, his children and his wife. And in that moment, he realized he had a decision. As an attorney, he had seen how resentment and hatred had just ravaged some of his clients, that they weren't able to move beyond the divorce or the lawsuit or whatever. And he decided that he didn't want that for his life. He decided in that moment to love. And he came from that energy in everything he did for those 6 years. And even though he ate the exact same things, he had to do the exact same work as all the other prisoners, his body thrived in that energy, which, by the way, would be the opposite of the judge's energy, which is heavy and repressive and controlling. And so we get to see that if we're willing to really take this thing on, that it has power. What's the next story that I want to... Oh, what about the woman that they captured this story in the Christian Science, the Herald of the Christian Science, so it's Christian Science Monitor is what we call it today. A woman witnessed a gentleman dropping his wallet outside of a store, unbeknownst to him. He goes into the store, another gentleman comes up and grabs it and walks away. She immediately goes into blessing the gentleman, blessing his integrity, blessing, anything that she can think of. And within seconds, the gentleman realizes he's dropped his wallet, and he comes running out. And the other gentleman comes up and hands him his wallet. And the gentleman who lost it thanks him, and he said, "She told me to do it." Now, that again points to, for most people walking the planet, they're so used to the repressive energy of the judge, because it's just a constant voice inside of us, that her affirmation, her blessing was such a contrast. And you see, the universe, the whole substance of the universe is love. It's the most predominant thing. So love carries love. Love carries blessing. And so it has a magnifying effect than that repression. And it stood out for that guy. He said, "She told me to do it." It's powerful. And then finally, and one that we'll be able to relate in, and particularly in New Thought, a woman was crossing Central Park late at night. A gentleman accosts her. He throws her down on the ground violently. And I always want to say, she says to him repeatedly, softly, but out loud, "You are a son of God. You are a son of God." And he gets up and he runs away. Again, what a contrast to what we're fed. How many of your judges are praising you and saying, "Well, actually, mine likes to say, 'Good job,' when I do exactly what it says." But it never says, "You are a son or a child of God." It doesn't go that far. But then to interject that. And I also want you to just focus on the amazing presence of that woman. Come on. I mean, how many of us would think to do that in the middle of that? But this is the power of this book. We are being asked to practice this every day until it becomes our practice. becomes what we do. And we can begin to see from these stories, from what we know in this movement about love, why blessing has so much impact. Your very nature is love, as so many other things. Your nature is strength and power and compassion. It goes on and on. But we must be relaxed. That is when Spirit flows as us. To do that, we need to get this pest back in its appropriate place, which is a smaller role than we tend to give it. Get it to stop poking at us, cajoling us, never letting us go. That means we meet it with the same kind of energy and say, stop. I need to just get my bearings here for a minute. When we do, we step back into our nature, back into the flow. And with that, things that we can't even explain on this planet begin to happen. It all sounds so easy. I'll be praying for you this week. Now I want to invite you to begin to prepare your love offerings as we invite the choir back up.